crap. Well, howdy folks. I'd like to welcome you to What's in Tegan's Storage Locker, the show that dares to answer the question, what is in my storage locker? The answer most of the time is going to be comic books, because I have a lot of comic books, and a lot of them aren't organized in any way, shape, or form. Some of them even need bags and boards, or need their bags and boards replaced. So that's just what we're going to do here, in increments, hopefully as far as my cat allows. As you can see, we're starting off with a big pile of random stuff that I just grabbed from a box. Let's get going on it. First up, we have the Sabretooth special from, what year was this? 97, I'll bet? 98, January 98, so it came out in 97. From the period when Sabretooth was in X Factor, believe it or not. This has art by Frank Tegan, who was building quite a name in the 90s. Gorgeous stuff. You can just see who did the coloring. This is Shannon Blanchard. Don't remember that name. But written by Jorge Gonzalez. You see interesting stuff throughout, even just the talking parts. But once you're done with the exposition, it really starts to get interesting. My goodness, this is a very nice looking comic book. Yes, very nice. I think don't have to ask why I bought this at the time, even if X Factor in the late 90s wasn't a good book. This looks like it was a good spin-off. All right. Now, this one needs a bag and a board, since it's got this cardboard cover that's very easily bent and dented. So we'll put that on there. There we go. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. It's that easy, folks. What's next in the pile? Get off here, brother. All right. Next up, we have, the Invincible Iron Man number 12. The last, well, not the last issue of the Heroes Reborn run. That would be 13, because they did a weird crossover in the 13th issue of each of these relaunched books. But, yeah, this is towards the end when all the original, the image artists who they got to start the books, they were gone. So everything was left was being written by, and this is when they had the fold-outs for everything in the book, to tell you what was going on. And, Teen NBC. Saved by the Bell, the new class. Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee was still doing plot. Jeff Loeb on the script. Ed Benes, Terry Shoemaker, and Mike Miller. That's kind of a motley grab bag. Ed Benes, of course, would go on to greater success with a few things. I remember him from Birds of Prey. I liked him on Birds of Prey because I like Gail Simone on Birds of Prey. And Terry Shoemaker, I remember really liking Terry Shoemaker in the 80s when he was just doing, seemed like he was just doing a lot of X-Men fill-ins, if I'm recalling correctly. Spawn movie soundtrack. Oh man, that's an excellent album. I forget. Oh yes, this was about Galactus. So they're all the heroes of Galactus and the slightly off model Avengers. All right, that gets a bag. I don't think this bad boy needs a board. All right, put that down there. Oh, the next one in the pile is the next one in the order of that story. The Heroes Reunited 4-4. This is the next to last issue of the Heroes Reborn Captain America. Now, of course, the Heroes Reborn Captain America had the one thing that actually really came out of this, which was the Ricky Barnes character, who was later brought into the regular 616 as Nomad, the girl without a world. I don't know what became of her. So this was Jeff Loeb, of course, Joe Bennett and Ed Benes, homage on the inks. So, Dr. Doom, and I think that doesn't look too bad. I have no idea. I would probably not enjoy this story if I went back to read it. I remember not really digging it at the time because I was sort of checked out. I don't even think I bought the last little bit of the Heroes Reborn titles, because by then they'd already announced the Heroes Return titles, and that's what I was on board for. Although at the very end here, for Gru, we still miss you. Mark Grunwald, of course, he died right, I want to say, the outset after it was announced, or right before it was announced. What's next here? Oh, Batman Shadow of the Bat, 68. Oh, man, you have no idea how much struggle it is just to be able to film, because he just wants to wreck this whole, everything I have set up. He's like a wrecking ball. All right, so this is Batman Shadow of the Bat. That was pretty much Alan Grant's book for, I want to say, most of its running time. This was Jim Aparo. Jim Aparo was off the main Bat book by now for a few years, so he just sort of stuck around doing fill-ins. I always think it's a great tragedy that Marvel didn't snap him up when he didn't have anything to do. He would have been a great Daredevil artist or great Punisher artist. Let's see, I don't remember anything about this. Was this before or after? Yeah, this was before No Man's Land, and then they had the big, the earthquake first, and then they did No Man's Land. And I really like No Man's Land. I like that whole story, and I hated the ending so much I dropped all the Batman books for years. Didn't buy another Batman book for almost a decade after they ended No Man's Land because I disliked the ending of that one so much. Yeah, I'll put a bag on that one. Ugh. There we go. Another issue is Shadow of the Bat from, Mark Buckingham. This was from a month they had. It was actually kind of a fun month. They used to do cover theme months, and this month was just, straight ahead portraits. There were some really nice pieces. This is a nice piece for that matter. Who did this? Is it going to tell me who did this cover? You had to look back in this month's cover paintings by Christopher Moeller. Very nice. This was Mark Buckingham, inked by Wayne Fauché. I think that's Fauché. And it's a team up with Fate, the 90s Fate. Where is the 90s Fate? He was Dr. Fate has never really sold that well, so he was probably their best attempt to try and sell Dr. Fate was to make it a book about a guy with knives. Although, where is he? There he is. There he is. He's got this Ankh tattoo and a trench coat, of course, because it was the 90s. Lots of video game ads. You can tell that the PlayStation is just getting popular because not only are the video games back after a little bit of a lull in the mid-90s, but they're suddenly, they're about stuff like cars and sexy ladies instead of, plumbers and stuff like that. Murder at 1600. I probably saw that. I don't even remember it. Who directed that? Don't even recognize that. See, Nintendo 64, the Clay Fighter 63 and a third. That was their big. I'm not a video game person, but I want to say Clay Fighter was their big hat in the thrown in the fighting game ring, which just shows you where Nintendo was in the late 90s when other people were doing car games. All right. Oh, and another issue of Shadow of the Bat. This looks like it. Yep. The second part of that crossover. There's a better picture of the Fate. More by Buckingham. Yeah, he was always good. This was, I think, after he had done the second, he did the second Death series, I want to say, with Bacalo. I want to say they did it together. I may be wrong. But yeah, this is a nice book. There's Deftones for you. Hello. Castlevania. Castlevania for PlayStation. What was I saying? Alien Resurrection. I remember I saw this at a midnight screening. I didn't mean to, but my parents and I were just driving through town on our way back from something or other, and we saw that they were doing it, and they're like, oh, let's go. And we enjoyed it quite a bit. And then, of course, turns out it's not that great a movie, but it's an enjoyable movie, I've always said. If you can sort of dig the difference there. It's not very good, but it's very watchable. More PlayStation ads. Man, this is a nice looking comic book. And it's Alan Grant, so I'm sure it's probably read pretty decent too, even though it had, that guy in it. All right, and here's an ad for anime, which was just sort of beginning to pick up steam in the country at that point. Enough that they were putting in ads on the back of comic books. What's next? Oh, it's Lobo. I think I was one of the only people who stuck with the Lobo solo book this long. Well, it had Alan Grant on it, and he never really wrote anything bad. Sometimes, Lobo was less than interesting, but it wasn't really bad because it was usually at least fun to flip through. Drawn by Critchlow. They're doing something cute with the name, so I don't remember what Critchlow's name is. I'm sure I'm putting it on the screen right this second. And, his Lobo going around doing his bounty hunter thing. Oh, I forgot that. They made a Scud the Disposable Assassin game, although that's for PC, it looks like. I don't see a PlayStation ad on that. He had a whole supporting cast. I remember Al's Diner and the waitress. And he had a friend, Jonas, with big tusks. He never showed up in anything else, I don't think. More PlayStation ads. Pretty much PlayStation was keeping these magazines afloat at the time, I guess. Yeah. Fun stuff, I guess. You get a bag. There we go. What is next in the pile? How about, What If 99? What If starring Spider-Man? Now, this is after they had, they'd switched up What If, and I guess you can't really complain because it did buy a few more years from the book. They stopped doing the What If Spider-Man did so-and-so, and there was just like What If starring Spider-Man, and you'd figure it out once you started reading, because they didn't have the Watcher in the book anymore, and that made me angry, because I always liked having the Watcher at the beginning of the book, just telling you what's up and who's who and all that. But again, they were doing the fold-outs, so just to tell you, what's going on here with the characters and all that. And I don't remember what the concept of this one was. Lisa Hawkins, don't remember that name at all. Eric Battle, he showed up every now and again, I remember. That was the thing about What If, is that sometimes you'd have absolute nobodies on the book who'd go on to do great things, or, it'd be their one comic they'd ever do. It was a book they'd take chances on for one way or the other. At the time, I probably thought this was not that great art, but it's not bad. Overpower, I spent way too much money on Overpower. I should have just took all that money and invested it all in early Magic the Gathering sealed boxes. I'd be living in a mansion if I'd have done that. I still can't really figure out this is Black Cat and Spider-Man fighting Scorpion. Doing something or other. Oh, well, that's something you can't do in a regular one. Have him reveal his secret origin to J. Jonah Jameson. Now, the interesting thing about this book is just the cover, because it's by Leonardo Manco. He was doing covers, and he did a few interiors for What If, too. Excellent artist. I sort of put him in the same pile as Tehran, because they came along at the same time, and we're doing something kind of similar. This was a very bad period for Marvel. They didn't have a lot going on, but they had a few people they could shuffle around and put on good books now and again. Oh, and another issue of What If. Another, what was I saying? This looks like another, I want to say another Leonardo Manco cover. Daredevil doing something or other. Bill Roseman, I want to say, is that the same Bill Roseman who was the editor? Hector Collazo, don't know that name. Ian Aiken, I want to say he's of the Aiken and Garvey team. Not with Garvey here, obviously. Oh, Jack Davis Kit Kat ad. That's the most interesting thing in the book, actually. Jack Davis doing, and he's doing watercolors, it looks like. Never looked bad. Even a Kit Kat ad was fun. Oh, Marvel Online and America Online. That places this comic book in time. Here's a bug you're going to want on your computer. So what was... see, the thing is, you'd have to actually read the story, I guess, to figure out what was going wrong here. Oh, what if Daredevil's dad had thrown the big fight? It tells you there. So basically he grows up working for the Kingpin, I guess. You must fall, yep. He's... they're still selling Revell. Oh, when I was a kid, I loved putting together plastic models. I always looked at the Gundam stuff there, but for the grace of God go I, because I'd never seen the show, but I put together a couple of those things, and they're very fun. You can get lost in that. There's an AOL contest. Oh, see Nick in 3D. See, they were still in sort of this transitory period where they still had ads for kids stuff, but the ads for video games were starting to skew a bit older. All right. Oh, another What If. I loved What If. Even when it was bad, it was still good. Oh, and this one was Archangel. So what was the What If? It was a What If Angel remained a horseman of apocalypse. I'm betting things would be mighty metal. Yeah, he just looks like Johnny Green. Another Bill Roseman joint. Fred Haynes with penciling with, I want to say Fred Haynes did more stuff. Art T-Bear, Alan Martinez, and Hack Snack Studios. Don't remember that name. This is kind of fun. At the time, I probably wouldn't have dug this as much. But, yeah, this is pretty decent. It's got an energy that you don't see often anymore. And, you can say, it's, third or fourth generation Image, mimeograph. But at the same time, there's an energy there because the Image people they tried to have energy in whatever they were doing, even when it didn't work out that well. This is fun, I admit. Don't see those subscription ads anymore. What was the deal here? 1 title for $21.97 a year, 2 for $20.97 a year, 3 or more for just $19.97 a year. And they were really pushing this Heroes for Hire. And I bought it. I think I bought that that volume of Heroes for Hire, and I really wanted it to be better than it was. It just wasn't as great. Pascal Ferry, I think, did the art, though. That was interesting, at least for a little bit. And I think that's Chris Garuso, early Chris Garuso comic strip. He's the guy who did the mini Marvels that were really popular for a while. Still see them every now and again. I think I saw one on a Elektra issue a while back. All right. You get a bag. Oh, and it's another issue of Lobo. Oh, and this looks like a really good one because it's got art by this Rafael Garez guy. He did some 2000 AD. He actually did a Slain storyline. So, that's how he got into American comics, I think, is because, the 2000 AD connection. That was a movie that had very long legs. One of these people ended up being really famous. Can you guess which one? Oh yeah, this is a nice looking book. This is a pretty, and of course no one was reading Lobo but me at the time. Oh, this Spawn PlayStation game. I barely remembered that existed. I didn't have a PlayStation. I had a Nintendo 64, and they didn't get the fun games for that. That was the last video game system I ever bought before I bought a Wii. And I bought a Wii when they were really cheap. So, you know, I was really committed to gaming, you could tell. Man, this is... Oh, is this a... He's talking about... He's fighting Santa's elves still. There's a Crash Band. Man, the PlayStation ads were really weird. How was this supposed to get you pumped for Crash Bandicoot? I don't know. Man, this is just a nice looking comic. Beast Wars ad. This is another PC game with zombies. They're trying to get on that Resident Evil tip, I think. Ozzy Osbourne. Back, oh man. His greatest hits. Back before he was America's lovable, you know, drug casualty grandpa there. I remember when he first started doing reality TV, it was just the strangest dang thing. Here's one, Parappa the Rappa. Everyone remembers Parappa. I never even played a Parappa game, but I remember Parappa. Oh man, this is a nice book. I mean, just Lobo going around blowing things up, but you know, man, it just looks really cool. Command and Conquer. They did a Command and Conquer for the PlayStation. And that was I want to say that was the last of the Pierce Brosnan Bonds. I tapped out. I think I made it halfway through GoldenEye. And I just didn't have any interest in those movies ever again. I still haven't seen a single one of the Daniel Craig Bonds, and those are the ones everyone likes. The Flash. This was from the Grant Morrison, Mark Millar run with Paul Ryan. Oh, that's a good lineup for a comic book. Mark Millar was, you know... Oh, and hello. Are we in your way? At least he didn't knock over the camera this time. Yeah, this is nice. I remember it was a fun era on the book. It gave it some energy because I was really... no offense to the guy, but Mark Waid, he was on this book for way too long. And this was like a breath of fresh air when these guys came in to do their bit. But with Mark Waid, it had been, I think, diminishing returns. But then again, I was a real fan of the Mr. Loeb's run. And, you know, they didn't continue any of the... Oh, he broke his legs. They didn't continue with those supporting characters or anything. They were putting out a lot of Flash, though. A lot of Flash. You had a Secret Files, T-shirt, Speed Force Anthology. Impulse was still going strong. Impulse lasted a while. Impulse Annual, too. You get a bag. Yeah, come on. Superman Secret Files and Origins. This was towards the very end of my Superman buying. I bought up through, I think, right before the turn of the century. And it's not even that I wasn't enjoying the Superman books anymore. I was just sort of like, you know, off the Superman train for a while. This was during the Electric Blue period, which wasn't that bad. It has a terrible reputation. But, you know, you have to put out 52 plus issues of Superman a year. You're gonna start doing weird stuff, and this was kind of fun. Everyone knew it wasn't gonna last forever, but you know, these Secret Files books, they'd have fun stuff like, oh, here's a Dan Jurgens and Jerry Ordway story, very classic team doing the very unclassic Superman. Thank you. I needed that box knocked over. How did you know that? Oh, it never ends with this guy. Oh, this is a nice story. Just sort of going over the whole Superman deal, Batman cameo, the autobiography of Jimmy Olsen. And you get nice pinups like Jurgen's pinups of the main dude and Stuart Eminem. That was another reason I wasn't going to stop buying the books as long as Stuart Eminem drew them. He drew an excellent Lois Lane. Excellent. Tom Grummett on Jimmy Olsen. They had him sort of back doing the Kirby thing where he was going around in a jumpsuit having adventures. John Bogdanovich. Who did that Clark Kent? George Giante. Daily Planet pinup. Steve Lieber. There you go. There's an issue of the Daily Planet. That's kind of fun. The issue of the National Whisperer. The pushing the Millennium Giant storyline. That was the last hurrah. And it was Peter Krause. They actually did a Metropolis Special Crimes series, I want to say. Looks like Peter Krause. Yep, Peter Krause, Dennis Janke. Scott Eaton doing Star Labs. Here's I want to say, is that Jeff Matsuda? Looks like Jeff Matsuda to me. Bet you it's Jeff Matsuda. Oh, Todd Nauck. They were very similar at the time. Todd Nauck's still going strong. I buy anything he does nowadays. I'm happy to see him still succeeding. Tom Grummett. Ma and Pa Kent. Here's some Ron Friends pages. People forget Ron Friends did a couple years of Superman towards the end of the Triangle period. It's a Guardian pinup by Kieran Dwyer, yes. Jurgens and Matthew Ryan, I want to say, is that? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Jurgens and Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan. You don't see Paul Ryan inking very often. Interesting. But Paul Ryan's another name who was doing some Superman books. And, here's... You know, they never shied away from Clark and Lois's sex life. Eminem and Von Graber. Superman timeline, or at least a post-crisis Superman timeline. So how much this still fits in is, and a menu from Bibbo's restaurant. See, that's a fun package. They obviously put a lot of care into stuff like that at the time for people who were reading the Superman books. Fun stuff. Yeah, get in there. And here's another issue of Lobo. More Alan Grant goodness with, they're always doing stuff, so it's Critchlow on pencils again. He was, I think, one of the book's semi-regular pencilers, along with, I want to say, what's that guy's name? Val Semix. He did a bunch. He drew pretty good Lobo. And, of course, the running joke of just always demolishing Al's Diner, which you'd think would get old after a while, but they just kept doing it. Because if you hang out with Lobo in pretty much any capacity, you're going to get smashed. The Kents. Now, this was... I read this years later in trade. This was an interesting book. John Ostrander, Timothy Truman, just doing a straight-up Western with ostensibly about the Kents in not ancient Kansas, but, Civil War era Kansas. Wonder if it's been reprinted recently. That's a nice-looking book. Ad for Tangent. I love Tangent. And there's another one of those portrait covers. I love Tangent. I thought it was great. Wish they'd do another Tangent. I'd be there on opening day for that one. Oh, and another issue of Lobo. I was the one person keeping Lobo on the stands, I guess. Because it never disappointed. Alex Ronald Not a name I'm familiar with, but this is interesting. Sort of like Frank Quietly Avant Lalette. Oh, he lost his head. Oh, that's funny. And he's still killing people even without his head. They, Maverick Music spent a lot of money on this Deftones ad. And there, what was I saying? Hal's Diner getting smashed up. The same thing happened in every issue of Lobo is the thing. And if you were a fan of Lobo, you didn't, you wanted to see the main man doing his thing. What can I say? I can't defend myself. I bought Lobo probably way too long. And, oh, here's the first appearance of Chase, who still shows up now and again. She actually showed up in Joshua Williamson's Rogue series a while back. This was from the Mensch Jones run of Batman, which is one of my all-time favorite Batman runs. I absolutely adored Kelly Jones' Batman. I don't think that he took a wrong... I liked everything he did, but I don't think he took a wrong step with this character. Oh, and here's a Clayface, and giving Jones the chance to do something truly gruesome. Here's recapping the sad history of the Clayface family. Oh, but see what I was saying? Kelly Jones, perfect for this type of gruesome horror character. Their son was just a sad story. What was this? Here, Lost Bronx. Oh, the Sega Saturn ad for an evil ice cream truck is that? No, it's a fighting game. Why would they do that? Like, I'm thinking, an ice cream truck racing game? No, it's a fighting game. Does that make any sense to you? Oh, and here we have the first appearance of Chase with 3 early pages by J.H. Williams III, who would go on to be one of the best artists in comics to this day. Man, just in a few pages, he can just steal the show. Although it fits in well with Kelly Jones. It doesn't fit out of place at all. So you can tell this is a pile from like 97, I think, most of the stuff. The VHS release of Batman and Robin, a movie I will defend until my dying day. And if that makes you just turn off this whole video in disgust, I don't know what to tell you. I love it. It's great. I can't stand the Christopher Nolan Batmans. I've seen them. I still don't even think I've seen Batman Begins like all the way through. And the other two I've only seen the one time in the theater. I think if there's a Batman movie that you can't take a kid to, then you fail deeply as a creator. Oh, and here's one that isn't from 97. An issue of Sleepwalker from 1992. Oh, November 91. So almost 92. I loved this book. Now, this is another book that does not have a great reputation, and I don't understand for the life of me why. Other than that, this was right on the edge of the image revolution, and it was just not what people were wanting at this time. High concept superhero stuff with sort of a fantasy main character. But Brett Blevins, inking himself, does not get any better than that. He's one of the best, one of the very best. He did a bunch of X-Men in the 90s, which may be where you know him from, but this book was sort of a spotlight for him in a lot of ways. And he just did some gorgeous work for this. Back when even Mint comics from the store would come with these little printing indents. And, you can tell we've gone back in time because there's Sonic the Hedgehog. He's the fastest critter the world has ever seen, and he's a hedgehog with a major attitude. That's what they were selling everything on in the 90s, attitude. Chris Eliopoulos again on letters. Marie Javins on colors. You may know her better as the current editor-in-chief of DC. Blevins, he's sort of drawing a McFarlane-esque Spider-Man here. Everyone was sort of trying to get some of that McFarlane energy on their Spider-Man. Marvel t-shirts. I don't think I had any of these, but I had a couple others. I had a Art Adams Thing shirt that I loved to death. Oh, see, that is just some nice work right there. Oh, they did these big Dungeons and Dragons. And paid a lot of money to advertise in Marvel books. Basketball cards, back when they still advertised basketball cards. Though this has a whole color center spread. Blades of Steel for Game Boy. Yes, and of course, I was an agent of Wham, but of course I still have the kit. It is somewhere in the storage locker. Maybe I'll bring it out one of these days if I can find it. I had I used to keep the membership card on me, and then my wallet got stolen one year. At the comic book store, no less. So I don't have my Wham card anymore, and it's one of my great sorrows. In the Science Fiction Book Club, which, oh man, they used to do these great omnibus editions that would not be available anywhere else. I still have a Sci-Fi Book Club omnibus edition of Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, Shadow of the Torturer series. And they never did another omnibus with all four of them. And I cherish that volume forever. But you see, they did omnibuses of Fred Saberhagen's Books of Swords and all the Anne McCaffreys and Fritz Lieber. Just stuff that I don't even think is in print anymore. Oh, and they were trying to get you to spend money on 900 numbers. They did that for years. They finally got me with the Marvel fan phone. I did call into that. I'll tell the story of how I broke the Clone Saga another time. I think I've talked about it on Twitter. Oh, and here's Brett Blevins drawing attractive ladies. Him and Mark Silvestri were in a contest to see who could put the most sexy ladies in the book. Yeah, I like this. Oh, I loved Sleepwalker. Oh, and this was actually a pretty decent game for a side-scroller. He drank, I want to say they had him drinking fruit punch instead of beer because, because it's a kid's game. You get a bag. Heck, you get a board. You get a board, Sleepwalker. That's how much I like you. There we go. Boom. And Anarchy 2. Here's another Alan Grant book. I bought just about everything he did. A reunion of the Alan Grant Breyfogle team. Norm Breyfogle, of course, being one of the signature Batman artists of the era, and many would say he's one of the best Batman artists of all time. Inked by Joe Rubinstein. It's an interesting combo. It works. Joe Rubinstein doesn't work for everyone, but he works for Breyfogle, I think. And he's got a Green Lantern. And here's an MTV Cherry Coke ad. I don't even remember what this was downloaded for free. I do not know what that is an ad for. It's just I was alive. I was buying comics, and I couldn't tell you what that was an ad for. It was like some early online thing. Oh, Futurama, back before it had been, resurrected 3 zillion times. Yeah, that's a nice comic. I don't think it lasted for very long, because I don't think anything was lasting very long at this time. But yeah, Anarchy's a character. I always liked Anarchy, because I thought that he had a point. He was one of the few Batman villains who he'd actually, he'd make a good point. Batman wouldn't be able to, say anything, but, punch him. Ooh, All-Star Comics from... Oh, man, they had a whole mini event with the Justice Society at this point. This is when they made the big push. I think it was before they made the big push with the JSA revamp. With originally it was a Starman spinoff. That's why James Robinson's name is first, followed by Goyer, Lark. Goyer was writing a lot of this stuff at the time. Where's the credits? Where's the credits for this? I want to say that's Michael Lark. Are you just not going to give me credits for this comic book? I just want to see who did it. Is it in the back? Yeah, it's in the back. James Robinson and David Goyer, writers Michael Lark, penciler Wade von Graubadger and Doug Hazelwood, inkers. Yeah, I'm a sucker for the JSA. This is about when I started buying the All-Star Archives because I like the JSA that much. I was going back to the golden age on them. Good time to be a JSA fan, although I think the subsequent Jeff Johns run sort of wore out its welcome, but I'm not the only one who thinks that, I don't think. And of course, he still has his grip on the characters. Oh, this one's... This is a comic that's actually worth a few dollars. I won't take this out of the bag that it's already in. I just bought this at the supermarket. You can tell because it's got the regular newsstand UPC. I bought What If every month, so little did I know this would prove to be one of the more consequential comic books of the era. The great team of Ron Frenz and Bill Sienkiewicz, they actually worked together a few times. They looked really good together. Maybe I should pull that one out for the show. Comic Book Heaven, #1. Oh, this was great. This was Slave. This was before the blogosphere, the comic book blogosphere, and this is kind of what the early generation of comics blogging would be, because it's just like talking about really strange comics from the Bronze and Silver Ages. I should pull that out and read that again. Scott Savadra. Love that one. You, because you're tiny, you need a board. And there you go. Boop. Easy peasy. Down to the last couple here. Oh, Captain America from May 2000. So this was well into the Heroes Return era, the Dan Jurgens era on Captain America. Mark Waid had already left a second time. He was not happy with how either of his Captain America runs ended. Brett Anderson and Dan Green. He just passed, I think, 2 days ago as of this recording. Nice looking comic book. He's in the Savage Land? Oh, Khazar's son. I've always said Khazar. I've heard some people say Khazar. Khazar just rolls off the tongue. Oh, there's Zabu. I play the Khazar Shanna deck on Snap. What is this, Fastlane? I don't remember what this was an ad for. Looks like an ad insert of some kind. Oh, it's for alcohol and drugs, so it's probably an anti-drinking thing. Well, you know, I like the Dan Jurgens run, but this is an issue hanging out with Khazar's son, so they can't all be winners. Oh, and this guy, Protocide, they brought back, this was kind of interesting, because they brought back sort of a prototype Captain America who had a weird problem with the super soldier serum, so he was not right in the head. That just the super soldier serum is just, and you can tell the demographics going up a bit because they got Calvin Klein ads. You get a bag. You know, I remember liking the Jurgens Captain America. It was never my favorite book, and it wasn't as good as the Jurgens Thor. The Jurgens Thor was a legitimately decent, good comic book. Avengers 2, Wonder Man and the Beast. I remember this. This was back when, right after the heroes returned Avengers, and they just were putting out a bunch of Avengers books because the Avengers were suddenly hot. And this was great because everyone likes the Beast with the Avengers. These days, people like the Beast with the Avengers a lot more than the Beast with the X-Men, that's for sure. It was Roger Stern, Mark Bagley, Greg Adams. Don't really remember that name very well. Oh, early Pokemon Stadium. Oh, well, you could just, it was a Pokemon fighting game. You're like, isn't Pokemon usually a fighting game? It's like, no, they had them actually fighting there. They actually just did a reprint of this last year, 6 months ago, I want to say. It's a pretty decent book, if you just want to see them, strangely enough, wrapping up plot lines from the Wonder Man book from the early 90s, which will never be reprinted under any circumstances for really dark reasons. And Thunderbolts Annual 2000. I was still buying Thunderbolts all the way, I think, I stopped when they got to Battle Bolts. I quit with 75. But this was a favorite book of mine all through. And it was named Norm Brayfogle. Norm Brayfogle inking himself, it looks like. So this was, I want to say, the book that resurrected Hellcat. Yeah, there's Damon Hellstrom. They're in hell, and they're encountering all sorts of dead Avengers, like Swordsman. There's that insert again. And I want to say that this is the book where they resurrected... there's a Moonstone feature in the back here. Nice. Oh, and X-Men Revolutions, when they were... The last time before Grant Morrison's new X-Men period, when they really... This was the return of Claremont that really went over like a lead balloon. Of course, I was long gone from the X-Men by then. Patsy Walker. Cheese and crackers, I'm alive again. I remember that. They did not want her dead, and sure enough, they brought her back. Yeah, and I think that is the last book in this stack. So, we had some fun. Cat tried to knock things over. I fought with him for about 45 minutes before the video actually started. So let's do this again sometime. How about it?